welcome to Rainbow Inspirations. My name is Greg Howe. I'm a volunteer with the Mountain Region of AARP North Carolina. And Rainbow Inspirations is presented in cooperation between AARP North Carolina
I
and
can't
Blue
hear you,
Ridge Tribe.
Greg.
Today, I'm happy to present our special guest is Bill Foskett, and Bill is someone I've known for a long time. We associated some 30 years ago as in leadership of a Quaker national program out of Washington, D.C., and that is where Bill joins us from today. Bill, can you hear me now? Okay, we have a problem.
Well, let's problem solve it right here with you all. So,
Okay.
Bill,
I can hear Rebecca, but I can't hear Greg.
I can hear Greg just fine. Greg, speak again.
Bill, you can't hear me?
Oh my goodness. Well, here we go then. I get to take it on. All right, everyone, you saw it here first, the inside scoop. So Greg, would you like to stay with us while we conduct? You can always, stay with us. Let's have it be a three-way conversation, and I'll relay any information you share. Bill, you're such a joy. It's so nice to meet you, and I'm so glad that we're here together today. So I'll start off right at the beginning. We would love to know more about your early life. The days of, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and your family of origin.
I grew up in a small, very stable town of about 4,800 people for years in East Texas, on the edge of the Piney Woods, which kind of demarks the cultural important to Texans boundary between East Texas and the rest of the state. And it was a town that seemed to have a lot of infrastructure things that had been built by the Roosevelt administration. So it was, for its size, it had a swimming pool, a football stadium where people worshiped on Fridays, football, of course, and football. And I was trying to think, well, what was kind of important to people? Football, the church, education, and farming, I guess, were the things that mattered to people there. And it was segregated right down to the water fountains, which I felt was rather strange, but that's the way things were then. It just seemed a little weird to me as a child, but you can't do much about that when you're a child.
Well, that's interesting, though. So as a child, you felt really struck by the segregation. So what was your family like? Is that something a value that was instilled in you by your family?
My parents had both grown up on the Mexican border in Laredo, Texas. And so they were, they were used to being a white minority, I think. And just because you were Mexican didn't mean you were poor or powerless. And so to them, it was something that adults lived with. If you disagreed, you were in that context, sort of had to be careful about it. When the Brown versus Board of Education thing passed, we had a young architect with bright blue eyes and a bow tie and a lovely wife and two beautiful children who applauded the decision, and he got a crossbird on his lawn. And he left town 2 weeks later. And no one was comfortable with that, but it's kind of crazy.
Wow, that was
I think things have changed now. Now, a few years ago, I got a copy of the local newspaper, and there on the front page of the paper was like September. There was a picture of the football team, and about half the guys on that team were black, and they were looking forward to a good season. So I think that I hope and think that problem is healing, and that people continue to appreciate each other. It
Well,
wasn't mean, but that's the way it was.
yeah, the context of your growing up is important. And I'm curious when in that time frame you started to sense that maybe there was something about you that was different.
Yeah, I graduated the high school in a class of I think there were 48 of us, and most of those people I'd begun first grade with. The town had sort of a polite appreciation of differences and different people. And eccentricity was something that was kind of appreciated, like nice seasoning in food. Uh, it was something to enjoy rather than to get all panicky about.
Mm.
And so I always felt I was a little different. But boy, I sure didn't understand it. I think I first became aware of this when I was probably sometimes around in the fourth, fifth grade. And
Okay.
I was very attracted to this other kid who was a grade below me, and we weren't playmates, didn't live nearby. He lived probably a half a mile away, which in this small town was a long ways. you know,
Okay. Yeah.
and I just didn't understand it. I remember it to this day, and I remember actually where the exactly I have sort of a visual style of thinking. I remember exactly, the place, the apple tree,
Huh.
and our yard on the east side of the house. And it was just like didn't understand it at the time, and it was I thought, oh well.
Was there anyone you could talk with about your feelings?
No, not at that level. Not really. My parents were not interested. They were they were not interested is the wrong word. My parents weren't comfortable with dealing about
Mm.
things like that directly,
Mhm.
maybe obliquely. And it wasn't something that kept me up at night. I didn't lose sleep about it and worry about it. I just kind of like, wow, wouldn't it be
Yeah.
nice if, well, gee, I don't know.
Huh. And Greg, I want to invite you in here to this conversation. Is there, because we're having a little sound problem for those who saw that. Bill can't hear Greg, so I'm here to translate. Greg, do you have any questions that you want to put out there at this time?
Well, I mentioned at the beginning that Bill and I knew each other through Quaker connections, but I understand that he originally did not become a Quaker till later on in life, and I was wondering about his spiritual background and how that might relate.
Great question. So, Bill, I'm going to relay that question to you. Um, Greg was wondering about kind of your spiritual journey that you came into being a Quaker later in life and how that might relate.
Yeah, I uh, I grew up in the Methodist Church, and that was a good experience too. I think I was the in that part of Texas. The Methodists seem to have built in several of the small communities around uh, rather grand churches, not
Mm.
particularly large, but they were architecturally ambitious. And ours had sort of arena style seating with fans on posts that rotated around to keep people. And above that, probably at least 2 stories, maybe 2.5 stories, was this huge lighted dome, and it all sloped down and focused on the thing. And the thing I liked most about that in recollection was the Sunday night service, which had a silent period to it, and the lights dimmed down, and everyone was silent for a while, and the preacher broke the silence with a prayer, and I always really sort of appreciated that.
Mm.
And So I continued off and went to Texas Christian University. There was the nation's only known communist Madeline Murray O'Hara was resident at University of Texas, and my parents were just not comfortable with us being in that setting, even though she was the only one, and kind of like the pet bird in a cage. I think, say something, Madeline. Say something communist for us. and, and at any rate, so my sister was already at TCU. I have an older sister who's very dear to me. My sister was already at TCU, and my parents felt it was a good, safe spot for us. And Southwest Conference football was big at that time, and it was it was a in many respects a difficult setting for me, but it too TCU also had uh, a religious component, and it wasn't heavy handed. It was just there, So your I think the first semester your freshman year you had to go to chapel at Tuesdays at 11 o'clock every week, and you had to show up there. No one was taking names or anything like that. You were just obligated to do it, and so most people did. And the disciples, who are the denomination behind TCU, have a wonderful church adjacent to the place with a marvelous organ, and I would go to vespers there on Sunday nights, and it was, again, another one of those things with simple ceremony, minimal, uh, absolutely glorious music, a very competent organist, and a very beautiful sort of Romanesque space with soaring ceilings
Wow.
and sort of Spanish style looking in a way on the inside. Very nice. So I like those things. And
Hmm.
I did a bachelor's and a master's degree at TCU.
And Bill,
And
I'm just gonna weave into this
yeah,
conversation
yeah.
about kind of the way that you came back to figuring things out for yourself in your sexual orientation around that time and how that was for you.
Um, well, one of the things about the local culture is that a lot of the boys were sexually active with each other. And and so I was part of that. Then I went off to college, and I discovered I didn't get in trouble or anything, but it was very obvious to me that the kids in college who had grown up in a kind of in a very different milieu than I had, urban, suburban type kids from around the country. Uh, that kind of behavior and experience wasn't a part of their adolescence. And so college was a kind of a time of suppression for me. Um, and that went on all the way through college. I remember uh, being approached on one occasion by someone who made a pass at me in a public restroom, and it frightened me, you know. And even though, it just frightened me. It wasn't violent. It wasn't anything like that. It was just frightening for me, and
Wow.
so I wrestled with that a lot. I didn't date much. I had a girlfriend, but that really didn't work out very well for either of us. And so, you know, probably from my junior, senior year on forward until I went off and settled into grad school in California, it was a dry period for me,
Okay.
um, sexually.
And then
Um,
you went and got your PhD soon after that. Is that right?
yeah, I served as one of those over the transom candidates. I read an article about the Claremont colleges in Saturday Review of Literature, which is now defunct. And I thought, oh, wow, that's the place for me. But psychology, research psychology type educational background, it kind of had this pattern of things you do and times you do them and where you go. And I was already on the track, to head off someplace else, literally in Austin, when a letter came from the dean of Claremont Graduate School, which I had just applied to on him. And it was a wonderful letter. It was a page and a half, single space. It definitely wasn't a form letter. And the some of it said, well, gee, we're sorry that we still don't have our catalogs ready for the fall semester, but we think they'll be ready sometimes in the fall. So we can't send you a catalog, but we got your application, reviewed it. And if you'd like to come on out, we'd like to have you, but we don't have any money for you. But if you do want to come on out, we think we can find the money for you after you get here. And I thought, yes, yes, this is the kind of people I want to be around. People who look for way forward. And I did, and it was like a fish finding water.
Wow.
I
A fish
I
finding
felt
water.
truly at home, with my personality and interests and all of that for the first time in my life, I think, really, because I had felt like a misfit in the Texas setting. Uh, I wasn't shunned or harassed or anything like that. I just knew somehow I wasn't quite on the same beat as the other guys, other kids.
How did you
But people
manage?
were okay with that. No one bothered me. It was like, oh yeah, that's him. He's different. We know him. I remember being downtown on a Saturday morning with my father. My head was probably about knee high to his waist, and he wasn't a tall man. And he introduced me to one of his friends, who was standing up there, tall guy with a big hat. And the guy looked down at me and smiled and drawled and said, well, young man, I knew you when you were just a gleam in your daddy's eye. And, I kind of, yeah, okay.
Wow. So I'm really curious about that time before you were a fish that had found water, and just how you kept yourself moving forward, how you kept your mental health, and how you found a balance during that time of being a little out of the range of what most people accepted.
Well, at TCU, I was very active in student government and had several other very close friends who the four of us all worked together, and that was very important for me. And sort of being a kind of, it wasn't like I was this weird guy off in the corner. People appreciated me, and I was visible, but still not I still hadn't really come to grips with the gay thing. That wasn't the way it was framed at the time. As I've thought about our conversation, that wow, when I first kind of became aware of this, it was either from TV remarks or a copy of Playboy magazine or something. But gays were characterized as guys with the Peter Pan syndrome.
Huh.
And my thinking at the time, and then was, well, they don't seem to like that, but it sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Huh. Yeah.
And but things change, context change, and I was kind of caught, I think, in my undergraduate and master's program years, and at an awkward time when things were on the cusp of change. It was probably about the time of the Stonewall event in New York City, which was a big turning point for uh, gay rights. And so when I got to Claremont, somehow or other, I found out about this. Was reading along, I found that the Quaker Yearly Meeting, London Yearly Meeting, had done a 10-year consideration of gays and their presence in the Quaker religion, and was this good, was this bad, and so I got this. It was a pamphlet, probably about you know, maybe a little less than a quarter inch thick, and Pepto-Bismol pink cover, and read it. It was a very thoughtful thing, and it dealt with spirituality, and it dealt with acceptance, and it. If people read it now, I think they would recognize lots of things that came to be the pattern. And I kind of evolved along with that evolution of thinking in the culture and society. Uh, but I still was I still wasn't out at Claremont, and I was involved with women sexually at Claremont, and it wasn't really until I left that I had my first experience with a man since since high school. Uh,
And
and I kind of kept that to myself. Um, but got to Washington and wound up staying. Got involved in sailing and had lots of camaraderie in a very small fleet, and then crewing on other people's boats and like that a lot. So I got that kind of aspect of being part of a team, which I had never gotten in high school. I'd never really understood that guys doing things together,
mm,
you know.
yeah,
And
yeah. Let's see if
but it was a great fleet, and
wow. That's so interesting. I want to see if Greg has anything to chime in here since we're missing his questions. Did you have anything you wanted to ask, Greg?
Well, I know, Bill, you've had, well, I guess you can't hear me. He's had a long working life with a variety of experiences. So maybe just a little quick summary of some of those positions that he's held over the years.
Bill, what do you think he asked about? This is a game. No, I'm just kidding. He's asking about your career and the way that
yeah.
your different professions might have played in.
Oh, it was amazing. I came on a fellowship kind of program. It was go study in Washington for a year, and that was very generously funded by the Ford Foundation. We traveled a lot, and we were all placed around, and it was at that point that I bought a very demanding single-handed boat that's now an Olympic class boat called a Laser. Started sailing on the river and on the Potomac.
Oh,
And in the fleet, there was a guy, the very fleet. There was like this, 60-year-old neurosurgeon, and there were two people from the British consulate, and there were high school kids from Alexandria, and there was another guy who was a speechwriter at the time for Henry Kissinger. And he and I, were kind of kindred spirits in many respects. He's a very intense guy. He said, "Oh, there's a job opening." At that point, I had stayed a second year, and the commission I worked for had done its job, wrapped up its its work, and had gone away, and I needed a job. So I went and followed up, and I went to work at a nice think tank in DC called Urban Institute, doing research and regulation.
and
Uh,
how were you accepted in those workplace environments?
it was. I think it would have been okay, but I never presented myself that way.
Hmm,
That's one of those things on my diagram. Is one of those dimensions is, well, how do you present yourself?
hmm.
I just kind of presented myself as this person who thought a lot and wrote a lot and was good at analysis, and I was appreciated and recognized for that, and no one really gave me any trouble. uh, then there was another lapse of employment when administrations changed and the Urban Institute decided to take a different approach to things. And so again, I was on the job market, and I had been early introduced to computers at Texas A&M when I was in high school. the electrical engineering department had gotten a big IBM computer when they still ran on vacuum tubes. And so I wasn't scared of computer stuff. I wasn't good at the kind of thing that guy wanted us to do, but it wasn't something that scared me. And oh wow. So I got a computer and just basically learned how to develop intelligent software at the time and started calling people and saying, hey, you know, I can do blah 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 blah. Would you be interested? I forgot how I put it. Would you be interested in hiring me?
I noticed this theme in your sharing about the way you present yourself, and this confidence that comes through about you and the perception of others. So as we move towards a closing, something about your sharing with me reminds me of the Kierkegaard quote. And that was the life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And
Yes.
as you reflect on your life experience, what wisdom do you see in the design of your experience that might inspire others?
It- I think it's important to make yourself make if you're gay, it's important that you come out early,
Okay.
you know? So what does that mean? And what if you don't? Well, it's not a disaster if you don't, but you will have missed a few things.
Mm,
And what I think I missed is really being able to just relax and be my full self present for other
mm,
people in my life.
beautiful. Yeah.
Uh, my sister, I didn't come out to my family. I never came out to my parents. They died before I had really finished sorting this out. But one of my nieces was getting married. My sister uh, is a person with great energy and a lot of attention to detail. And so I hadn't come out to her either. And so by that time, I was hooked up with my partner Bruce, and so I'm on the phone with my sister. She's in Walnut Creek, California, and I'm here, and we're talking. He said, "Well, Bubba, would you come out to the wedding, and you can stay here at our house, and there, put you in Melinda's bedroom, and you could have that. She's away now, and so I said, yes, that sounds good. He said, well, would you like to bring a friend? And I said, oh, yes, yes, I would like to bring a friend. And my sister's next line was, well, would you like one bed or two? Now, this is all in the context. My sister and
Mm,
brother-in-law were cultural conservatives and evangelical Christians, and but she just has this wonderful kind of gap, and I thought, oh wow, what a relief! I'm so glad
mm,
she knows. I'm so glad she figured it out, so I didn't have to do her that. So that the loss of power in that relationship during the time which I was, really not fully revealing myself.
mm.
Well, I felt like that was recovered.
Wow.
I missed those moments, that could have been richer and deeper, but you know, I I still I still have my sister, and
Beautiful.
now Bruce went out with me, and it turns out Bruce had at some one point in his career, he's a college professor. He had taught a course in Christian literature. The Bible is literature at one of the major universities in China,
We are
Shanghai.
nearing the end of our time, so this is a
Okay.
great story. I know it's
So
hard.
we really hooked up with my brother-in-law. And they just really, they could talk Bible stuff, and David thought he was, yeah, oh, this is great, So everything, and same thing on Bruce's family side. His family is just very Catholic and very extended, and they've just been wonderfully accepting, and of him and of me. And, we do weddings and funerals and grandchildren visits and all
Well,
that stuff, the two of us.
I really love the way that spirituality has woven through your experience. And I know this was just a small fraction of all that you have to share, Bill, but it was a gift.
Thanks for the chance.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, it was a joy. And thank you for being our December guest of Rainbow Inspirations, brought to you all by AARP and Blue Ridge Pride. We hope you enjoyed today's stories and inspirational messages, and that you'll share it with others. And we will say goodbye for now and expect another episode of Rainbow Inspirations coming to you soon. Thanks.
Way to go, ARP.